In the Western United States, 1992 wasn't just another year. It was a chaotic, unpredictable thrill ride that defied expectations at every turn. Particularly in California, it felt as though the state had volunteered, perhaps unwittingly, for every major drama the early 1990s had to offer. From firestorms tearing through forested communities and riots shaking urban centers, to courtroom clashes over civil liberties and a parade led by Goofy himself, there was barely a dull moment. For Californians, it wasn't so much a calendar year as it was an action-packed feature film. If you were living in the West that year, you were in for a wild ride, so hang on tight. January rolled in with a calm exterior, but beneath the surface, the earth was anything but still. Deep underground, tectonic plates were already shifting and grinding, setting the stage for the powerful seismic surprises that would rock the West come spring. On the surface, though, life continued with a sense of post-holiday normalcy. In California, the chatter wasn't about geopolitics or global tensions. It was about Johnny Carson. As the beloved host of The Tonight Show began winding down his legendary late-night run, people across the state tuned in nightly, nostalgic, and sentimental, holding on to a cultural icon who had become a fixture in American living rooms for decades. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, President George H.W. Bush made headlines by falling violently ill during a diplomatic dinner in Japan. But in most California households, that incident felt distant, more like a bizarre trivia item than a cause for concern. In schools up and down the West Coast, students were just returning from winter break, trading in holiday sleep-ins for early alarms and cafeteria lunches. February didn't shake the Western United States too violently in terms of natural disasters, but it did stir up a fair amount of political unease. With the 1992 presidential election campaign heating up, tensions were beginning to rise across the country, and the West was no exception. President George H.W. Bush, coming off a dip in approval ratings, was facing increasing scrutiny from both the media and the public. His leadership, once buoyed by the Gulf War, was now being tested by a sluggish economy and mounting domestic issues. Meanwhile, an unexpected and intriguing figure began to emerge on the national stage: Texas billionaire and businessman Ross Perot. Perot's flirtation with an independent presidential run captured the attention of many, especially in the politically independent-minded West. Californians, in particular, watched closely as Perot made the rounds on television talk shows, laying out his vision for more fiscally responsible government and promising to apply business principles to public service. His blunt delivery and reliance on charts and statistics struck a chord with technocrats and entrepreneurs alike. In the tech-savvy corridors of Silicon Valley, where data and efficiency were gospel, Perot's message resonated as both refreshing and pragmatic. At the same time, over coffee tables in Sacramento suburbs and community centers in places like Reno or Portland, his outsider appeal sparked conversations about whether the traditional two-party system was due for an overhaul. Though the month itself passed without the kind of upheaval that would come later in the year, February 1992 planted the seeds of political change. In the West, a region known for its innovation, independence, and occasionally rebellious spirit, the idea of a third-party candidate wasn't just intriguing. It felt almost natural. Whether or not Perot would follow through with a full campaign remained uncertain. But one thing was clear: the political ground, like the literal ground in this part of the country, was beginning to shift. Then came March, and Hollywood, as always, couldn't resist stealing the spotlight. The glitz and glamour of awards season descended on Los Angeles with full force, culminating in the 64th Academy Awards held at the elegant Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. Movie stars, directors, and industry powerhouses strutted down the red carpet in designer suits and gowns as flashbulbs popped and the world watched. That year, the psychological thriller The Silence of the Lambs swept the major categories, taking home 5 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director for Jonathan Demme, cementing its place in cinematic history. Barry Levinson's Bugsy, which had gone into the night leading in nominations and expectations, walked away with fewer trophies than anticipated, leaving fans and critics murmuring about Oscar politics and the unpredictable tides of Hollywood favor. Not far from the lights and cameras of Hollywood, in the port city of Long Beach, another chapter of history was closing. This one without red carpets, but with plenty of ceremony. The USS Missouri, the last active battleship in the U.S. Navy and a living relic of World War II and the Gulf War, was formally decommissioned. Flags were lowered, salutes fired, and veterans looked on with emotion as the vessel was retired from active duty. The ship, famously the site of Japan's surrender in 1945, was given a hero's send-off, steeped in military tradition and reverence for its long service. But even amid the spectacle of film awards and naval honors, a heavier mood was starting to settle over Los Angeles. Tensions in the city were rising, invisible to some but simmering close to the surface for others. The atmosphere was growing uneasy, and the city's sheen of sunshine and celebrity couldn't mask the mounting frustration in its neighborhoods. The pomp and celebration that defined March were, for many Angelenos, a stark contrast to the anxiety and discontent quietly building just beneath the surface. A storm was coming, and by April, Los Angeles would no longer be able to look away. That month, the tension that had been building finally erupted. The first blow came from deep underground, when California's north coast was rocked by the powerful Cape Mendocino earthquake. Measuring 7.2 on the Richter scale, the quake hit with a force that sent shockwaves through Humboldt and Mendocino counties. Buildings were damaged, roads cracked apart, and emergency services were stretched thin as they responded to the widespread destruction. The costs quickly soared into the tens of millions, and residents were left to pick up the pieces in the aftermath of one of the region's most significant seismic events in years. But the shaking wasn't over, not by a long shot. Just a few days later, events in Southern California would turn even more volatile. In the quiet courtroom of Simi Valley, a jury announced its decision to acquit 4 LAPD officers who had been caught on video repeatedly beating Rodney King, a black motorist. The verdict sent shock and outrage rippling across Los Angeles and beyond. What followed was a full-blown eruption of anger and frustration that had been simmering in communities of color for decades. The 1992 Los Angeles riots burst onto the national stage in a matter of hours. For 6 straight days, chaos reigned in the city. Entire neighborhoods were consumed by flames as rioters looted stores, torched cars, and clashed with police. The National Guard was deployed and curfews were enforced, but the violence still raged. In total, 53 people lost their lives, thousands were injured, and more than $1 billion in property was destroyed. The city resembled a war zone. Smoke filled the skies. News broadcasts carried the images across the country and around the world. While the rest of the nation watched in disbelief, Californians, especially those in Los Angeles, were forced to confront the raw and painful realities of systemic racism, police brutality, and social inequality. The riots marked a turning point, exposing deep divisions and forcing urgent conversations that could no longer be ignored. As if the spring hadn't already brought its share of upheaval, May delivered another jolt of sorrow and controversy to the Western United States. In the quiet, working-class town of Olivehurst, nestled in Yuba County in Northern California, tragedy struck in a way that would leave lasting scars on the community. A former student returned to his old school, Lyndhurst High, armed and intent on violence. What unfolded was a horrifying hostage situation that culminated in the deaths of 4 people and injuries to 9 others. The senseless act of violence not only stunned the local population, but also reignited national conversations about school safety, gun control, and mental health, issues that would only grow more pressing in the years to come. Meanwhile, down in the Bay Area, political theater was playing out on a very different stage. Vice President Dan Quayle, never one to shy away from a hot-button issue, gave a speech in San Francisco that managed to stir up a cultural firestorm. In what was intended to be a defense of traditional family values, Quayle singled out the fictional character Murphy Brown, a single, successful TV journalist who chose to have a child outside of marriage, as an example of what he saw as declining moral standards in American society. The response from much of California, especially its more progressive urban centers, was one of open ridicule and disbelief. Many viewed the vice president's remarks as out of touch and tone deaf, especially in a state where diverse family structures and modern interpretations of parenthood were increasingly normalized. The speech quickly became a flashpoint in the ongoing culture wars of the 1990s, setting the stage for heated debates on television, in newspapers, and around dinner tables from Sacramento to San Diego. By the time June rolled around, the Western United States was quite literally back in motion. In the early hours of June 28th, the ground beneath Southern California began to tremble as the powerful Landers earthquake struck the Mojave Desert with a magnitude of 7.3. The jolt was severe and widespread, felt as far away as Las Vegas and even parts of Arizona, sending residents scrambling out of their homes in confusion and fear. Roads cracked, buildings swayed, and emergency crews were quickly mobilized to assess the damage across several counties. But Mother Nature wasn't finished, not even close. Just a few hours after landers had rattled the desert, a second earthquake struck the region. This one, known as the Big Bear Quake, registered a magnitude of 6.5 and rocked the nearby San Bernardino Mountains. It was a 1-2 seismic punch that left communities from San Bernardino to Palm Springs on edge. While the Big Bear Quake caused less structural damage than landers, it deepened the sense of unease that had already taken hold. Aftershocks continued to ripple through the region, further fraying nerves and reminding Californians that life along the Pacific's volatile edge comes with its own unique set of risks. For many, sleep was hard to come by that week, and conversations around earthquake preparedness took on a new urgency. Summer wasn't just seismic. It pulsed with cultural shifts and generational turning points that signaled a new era in the making. In Berkeley, California, the founding of Delta Phi Beta marked a milestone moment in American collegiate history as the first South Asian fraternity in the country took root. This wasn't just another student organization. It represented a meaningful step forward in visibility and identity for South Asian Americans navigating campus life, adding rich new textures to the social landscape of the University of California and beyond. The emergence of Delta Phi Beta brought new traditions, new voices, and a sense of community to students who had long been underrepresented in Greek life. Meanwhile, a quieter but no less significant revolution was happening in the world of music consumption. For the first time ever, compact discs officially outsold cassette tapes, signaling a shift not just in technology, but in how people experienced music itself. The reign of the cassette, with its hissy sound quality, tangled tape disasters, and signature pencil rewinds, was finally giving way to the clean clarity and futuristic shine of CDs. In dorm rooms from Eugene, Oregon to San Diego, California, boomboxes were being replaced by sleek CD players, and Walkmans were increasingly shoved into drawers, replaced by Discmans and multi-disc changers. It was a sign that the analog age was on its way out, and a digital tide was rising fast. In August, the national spotlight moved away from Southern California and shifted northward, bringing fresh waves of tragedy and unrest to other parts of the western United States. In the remote hills of northern Idaho, a tense and ultimately deadly confrontation unfolded at a place that would come to be known as Ruby Ridge. The standoff began when U.S. Marshals attempted to apprehend Randy Weaver, a former Green Beret with anti-government beliefs who had been charged with failing to appear in court on a firearms violation. What followed was an 11-day siege between federal agents and the Weaver family that ended in bloodshed. 3 people were killed during the ordeal: a U.S. Marshal, Weaver's 14-year-old son, and his wife, Vicky, who was shot by an FBI sniper while holding their infant daughter. The events at Ruby Ridge shocked the nation and ignited fierce, long-lasting debates over the use of force by federal agencies, the rights of individuals, and the extent of government power in citizens' lives. For many, it became a rallying cry against what they saw as government overreach, and it would later be cited as a major influence in the rise of the militia movement in the United States. Meanwhile, several hundred miles south in Las Vegas, Nevada, another flashpoint emerged in a very different form. The West Las Vegas riots broke out in response to the acquittal of the LAPD officers involved in the brutal beating of Rodney King earlier that year. Although the most destructive unrest occurred in Los Angeles, the ripple effects of the verdict and the anger it provoked were felt far beyond the California state line. In the predominantly black community of West Las Vegas, the verdict sparked outrage and frustration over long-standing issues of racial discrimination, police brutality, and economic inequality. Demonstrations quickly escalated into riots, resulting in damaged property fires and a strong law enforcement response. While the scale of the violence was smaller than that seen in Los Angeles, the underlying tensions were strikingly similar. The event served as a stark reminder that racial injustice and social unrest were not confined to one city or state. They were national issues, deeply woven into the American fabric and impossible to ignore. September brought with it a powerful mix of devastation and inspiration across the western United States. In Hawaii, nature unleashed its full fury as Hurricane Iniki, the most powerful storm ever recorded in the state's history, made landfall. Striking the islands of Kauai and Oahu with winds reaching up to 145 miles per hour, the hurricane left a wide path of destruction in its wake. Homes were flattened, power grids were torn apart, and entire communities were displaced. The storm caused billions in damages and left thousands without basic necessities, yet the response from the people of Hawaii showcased extraordinary resilience. Neighbors came together to help one another rebuild, distribute food and supplies, and restore a sense of normalcy, even as the recovery efforts stretched on for months. Meanwhile, in the Nevada desert, a different kind of historic moment was unfolding. At the Nevada test site, a stretch of land long associated with Cold War secrecy and atomic blasts, Operation Julin quietly marked the end of an era. The test, conducted underground, was the last nuclear weapons test ever carried out by the United States. While the event received less public attention than the hurricane, its significance was profound. It symbolized a shift in global priorities, a move away from the arms race mentality of previous decades, and the beginning of a new chapter in national defense strategy. With this final test, the ground in Nevada fell silent after decades of rumbling under the force of nuclear detonations. October brought a welcome wave of excitement for kids growing up in the Western United States, especially those glued to their TVs and arcade screens. It was a month that felt tailor-made for young fans of cartoons, superheroes, and high-octane video games. For starters, the long-anticipated launch of Cartoon Network finally arrived, offering a 24-hour channel dedicated entirely to animation. It kicked things off with a nostalgic bang, filling the airwaves with classic Looney Tunes, Hanna-Barbera reruns, and other favorites from earlier decades, giving younger audiences a chance to experience the shows their parents had grown up with, and giving older viewers a reason to peek back in. But the cartoon revival didn't stop there. Batman, the animated series, premiered and instantly raised the bar for children's programming, with its moody visuals, noir-inspired art style, and serious storytelling that appealed to kids and adults alike. Just as fans were digesting that darker take on the Caped Crusader, X-Men debuted on Fox Kids, unleashing a mutant-fueled frenzy. With its action-packed plots and catchy theme song, it quickly became essential weekend viewing, pulling in fans from Los Angeles suburbs to the rainy neighborhoods of Seattle. Meanwhile, another cultural juggernaut was electrifying arcade halls and home consoles up and down the West Coast. Mortal Kombat, with its over-the-top violence, digitized fighters, and now infamous blood code, was causing a stir from Sacramento to San Diego. Kids flocked to local strip mall arcades, quarters in hand, eager to master fatalities and prove their skills to classmates and strangers alike. It was edgy, controversial, and exactly what made it feel so thrilling. At a time when politicians were beginning to sound alarms over video game violence, Mortal Kombat thrived on its rebellious image, becoming the crown jewel of 1992's gaming scene. For kids across the West, October was far from ordinary. It was a full-blown pop culture explosion. In November, the political landscape in the United States came full circle, and nowhere was this more evident than in the Western states. Voters across California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, and beyond joined millions of Americans in choosing a new direction for the country, decisively electing Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton as the 42nd President of the United States. Clinton's win over incumbent President George H.W. Bush and independent candidate Ross Perot marked a generational shift in leadership and a clear desire for change after 12 years of Republican control of the White House. Western voters, particularly in urban centers like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, and Las Vegas, played a crucial role in pushing the Democrat over the finish line, energized by issues ranging from economic recovery to healthcare reform and environmental protection. While ballots were being cast and counted, the cultural pulse of the West was thumping to an entirely different beat. That same month, Dr. Dre released his solo debut album, The Chronic, a groundbreaking record that would redefine the sound of American hip-hop and mark the explosive rise of G-Funk. The album wasn't just a local sensation, it was a full-on cultural eruption. West Coast hip-hop, once confined to underground clubs and independent radio stations, suddenly dominated national airwaves and record stores. The Chronic became the soundtrack of the streets, its deep bass lines and laid-back grooves blasting from car stereos cruising down the I-5, pouring out of barbershops, record shops, and corner stores from Oakland to Compton, and echoing across neighborhoods from Long Beach to Sacramento. The album's massive influence helped catapult Snoop Doggy Dogg into the spotlight and solidified Dre's status as a visionary producer, forever altering the trajectory of hip-hop in America. In the span of a single month, the West had reshaped both the political and musical futures of the nation. Then came December, rolling in with a bittersweet sense of closure to a year that had already delivered more than its share of upheaval, milestones, and cultural shifts across the Western United States. In Washington state, the Jack-in-the-Box E. coli outbreak emerged as a frightening reminder of just how vulnerable everyday life could be. The outbreak, which would soon become one of the most infamous food safety crises in U.S. history, began to claim young lives and sparked outrage, lawsuits, and sweeping changes in how the country approached fast food regulation. It was a sobering moment, casting a long shadow over the holiday season and underscoring how much work remained to protect public health. In the realm of politics, however, there was a quieter, more procedural milestone that still managed to make history. Lawrence Eagleburger, a seasoned diplomat with decades of service behind him, was officially sworn in as Secretary of State. His appointment marked the first time a career Foreign Service officer rose through the ranks to hold the nation's top diplomatic post. A subtle but significant shift in Washington's power corridors, and one that was noted with quiet pride by many who had spent their lives in public service. Amid all of this, families across the Western U.S. still found refuge in the season's usual comforts. Theaters were packed as Aladdin and Home Alone 2. Lost in New York lit up the big screens, offering fantasy, slapstick, and just enough nostalgia to soften the edges of a difficult year. Kids laughed, parents relaxed, and for a couple of hours, the world's troubles faded into the darkness of the movie theater. It was a brief escape, but in a year like 1992, even small joys felt enormous.
Joy will bring. Tune into the beat, feel the magic, it's true. Channel 1 9 on X, we're here just for you.